Let me start by thanking the Arab Organization for Human Rights. This is an extremely important platform, and I'm very happy to be with my co-panelists today to, raise these very difficult issues. Difficult, I say, because as someone who is Egyptian, I see men and women in Egypt every day facing a threat to life, being tortured in Sisi's prisons, and having no freedom of expression or freedom of assembly. Anyone can be picked up in Egypt, either for a blog, for no reason except that he or she may be suspect. Young people and older people are disappeared, face verdicts of executions. The litany of violations is long and is known to so many now through I would say, the great work done by leading organizations, human rights organizations, such as Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and many others, many other Egyptian organizations that are not allowed now to function in Egypt. The absence of civil society in Egypt has also brought about this situation where the voices of Egyptians inside cannot reach the outside world. Therefore, those who work outside and who can raise their voices, like the people on this panel, are of such paramount importance. Let me, because we have a short time, concentrate on a couple of things. And that is not so much the details of the violations, but the context, in order to understand why Sisi and his regime continue to execute people. And the subject of this meeting today is partly about executions. We need a moratorium on executions because there is an absence in the rule of law. And this regime, Sisi, came to power on the back of a tank. He hijacked Egypt's nascent democratic experiment. Whether you are with or against or were neutral as to the results of the democratically held elections of 2012, the fact remains that a coup occurred against a democratically elected president. And ever since that coup, there was no roadmap to democracy, as Sisi mentioned after the coup, and the West was happy to promote the idea that there was a roadmap to democracy. There was a roadmap to massacres, such as in Rab'a and Nahda and various other squares of Egypt. There was the arrest of over 60,000 political prisoners of different political orientations. There is the continued fear that is instilled in Egyptians so they dare not speak out or take to the streets. So the political context is that of a military coup against a democratic process that did not last more than a year before the military intervened once more to maintain its power and privilege, which it has exercised since 1952. One dictator after the other has ruled Egypt, has held Egypt with an iron fist, and through corruption and a coterie of supporters. The Sisi regime is probably one of the worst dictators that Egypt has ever seen. And he is supported by the West and by regional powers and is allowed to continue. He knows that he has to instill fear through executions, through torture, through an iron fist policy. He may remove the emergency law, but he finds different ways to instill the same law and even worse. He puts forward a strategy for human rights to con the outside world and whitewash his policies. He ensures that there are many women ministers and diplomats to tell the outside world that he's a liberal. He ensures that the minority Copts have a place in the legal system. All these are good signs in a democracy. But when a fascist leader pursues such symbols, and there are willing partners for him, all he does is entrench his regime, and there are those to help him entrench that regime. He wants to ensure, as he said before, that January 25th never happens again. He sent a message to the Egyptian people a few years ago and said the tanks are ready to roll in Egypt and can occupy every street and town and city of Egypt in a number of hours. He's telling the people, do not move. As Massimo said earlier, the issue of regime change is up to the Egyptian people. But my message here is that the outside world, particularly the United States and democratic governments, are enabling this dictator so that the Egyptian people cannot move. Not only can they not move, they cannot breathe. Egypt is a republic of fear, and Egyptians today are fearful in every move they make, and every person who raises their voice knows that there is an enormous price to pay, whether an actor, whether a journalist, whether a worker, whether a judge. And the judiciary is one other aspect that I want to mention quickly. The force of the military is certainly there, but it has used the judiciary in order to ensure that it is an arm of the military, to impose its verdicts. And many judges know that they are only in the positions they are in because they are administering the law according to the military. Following the coup, many judges sought the restoration of democracy, but they were dismissed from their positions. There were early resignations forced upon them, and worse. And there were some who languished in prison and died in prison. Egypt today uses the military, the media, in all its forms, in order, the Egyptian regime, uses the judiciary, the media, and all its institutions to serve one dictator and his policies and his vision, the vision of that is in alliance with the vision of regimes in the Gulf, and which serves regional powers. It is not the agenda of development. It is not the agenda for freedom for the Egyptian people or for the removal of corruption. It is an agenda to entrench the military in power, who control a vast percentage of the economy, and who now control the various financial and business companies in the country, and who buy support from Western powers through military deals. I think it's worth mentioning that according to SIPRI, the Swedish think tank, since the coup, Egypt's arms purchases and imports have increased by 73%. There are willing sales of arms from France, from the United States, from various European countries. It is shameful that a dictator such as Sisi, who does not allow the right to life to Egyptians, should be enabled in this way by democratic governments, unless sanctions are carried out against this regime, different sorts of sanctions, so that the red carpet treatment is not given to his generals and to his coterie of supporters and ministers, so that action can be taken against the Egyptian people by him. Then I believe that history will record that both the United States and democratic powers not only enabled Sisi, but were ultimately complicit in the death and torture of Egyptians. Thank you very much.